Brent Key this weekend says not only does he hear the fans, he agrees with you guys.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, guys? Welcome into Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. I wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I am plenty smart enough to talk about Georgia Tech football. Taking this daily journey covering the Yellow Jackets alongside me is my co-host, Jarvis Davis. He's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. I want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download them, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Today on the show, we're going to get into, is there still a way, still a chance Georgia Tech makes the ACC Championship? What did Kirby Smart have to say about Haynes King and his passive-aggressive tone? But first, Jarvis, Brent Key says the fans should be pissed, and I have a hard time disagreeing with him, especially, coming off that loss to Pitt. We've spent so much time discussing it. I'll read the quote of what Brent Key had to say, just so we have a way to kind of step forward with this. He said, asked by Kelly Quinlan of 247 Sports about being mad about the defense and Blake Gideon, Brent Key said, they should be pissed. They should be mad. That's why you love the fans. That's fan is short for fanatical. That's what you want. I hope they are, because I sure as heck am. Yeah.
I think everybody felt like that, right? And I think that when you look at how people view the game, like, I don't care how you look at it. You can look at it from a fan perspective. You can look at it from a former player perspective. I got a chance to talk to Cedric Griffin, who played for Georgia Tech, and we're going to drop that episode a little bit later on in the week, so you guys make sure you be on the lookout for that. And he was upset. It's just it doesn't take a PhD level of the understanding of football to not like what you saw on Saturday night. And we've talked about it, and I think that Coach Key putting it out there and saying exactly what it is, I'm not surprised by it, because that's just the type of guy he is. It's just, I think a lot of times it's about the why and why they played like that. And I think that the biggest thing for me is just having a couple of days just to kind of sit on what actually happened. You have more questions, then you do answers. You start the question like, okay, with all of these things on the line, with a bid for the ACC Championship, it would be the first time you would have gone to the ACC Championship games since 2014, with the opportunity to win the ACC Championship, which you haven't done since 2009. All of those, you're at home, all of those things in play, and you come out flat on the flats. Like that, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think that instead of defending what happened, he called it exactly for what it is. And, that's how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one aspect of this that the fans might run with in this specific quote is that, maybe he's showing some sort of anger towards his defensive coordinator, Blake Gideon, or he's showing some sort of anger towards the defensive side of the ball. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think what he is leaning into is really this idea of, we didn't win the football game, so of course you're going to be angry. And I think, from Brent Key's perspective, because of what he stepped foot into when he took over this job and what he's kind of transformed this thing into, and looking at the fact that, yes, you did, crap the bed in front of a sold out Bobby Dodd Stadium, but it was sold out because they got people to care again. And so I think when he looks at this from the fan perspective, it's like, yeah, I want them to care. I want it to hurt because it hurts the players too, that they weren't able to figure this thing out. It was interesting to hear him go through this post-game press conference after the game on Saturday. And as much as we spend a lot of time criticizing Haynes King, and I still think Jarvis, rightfully so, because I just don't think that Haynes played a good game. However, it was interesting to see how Brent Key really leaned into, hey, we did not protect him well. We were never able to establish the run. We were poor on third down. I think the funniest part of it, he said, if you had a checklist of all the things we did wrong, I could check all the boxes. We couldn't establish the run. We had drops. We had poor protection. He even said we got our tails whipped at the line of scrimmage. So it was interesting. Whereas a lot of people, I think, would look at this game and be like, man, I just think it's probably the worst game that Haynes King has played as a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. Brent Key, I guess maybe so unsurprisingly, was like, but there was a lot of things outside of Haynes that went wrong.
Yeah, this coming from former offensive lineman, so he understands it.
Yeah.
And this also is a master level class of head coaching, coach speak 101. Because what a head coach a good head coach will never call out individual players. He'd rather call out a group. So, hey, man, we're a team. Hey, I'm gonna call out all of the offensive line. Y'all know where I'm coming from. Y'all know I understand your plight. So, but I'm gonna call you out when you're wrong or when you don't do your job. So I think that's exactly what this is. And but I'm with you. Like, Haynes King did not look like himself. But two things can be true. Haynes King did not look like himself. I expect him to play better in those moments. And yeah, the offensive line, Pitt was coming. And to be honest with you, they put it on film. They didn't do anything new. We knew that. We had a conversation about the style of defense that this team plays with. So you had to be prepared for that. So, and at the end of the day, when you know what's coming and you don't perform well, that means it was an execution issue. So yeah, I totally understand why he would kind of try to shift some blame off of his player and go towards the group versus just trying to say, all right, Haynes King has to play better. No, he's not going to say that. He's like, yeah, you need to be protected better, because if it was the opposite of it, right? If Haynes King would have balled out, threw for 400 yards and had 3 touchdowns and 1 rushing, he would have brought up, while everyone's saying, yeah, Haynes King did all this. I promise you, on everything that my football knowledge that I have in my head, he would have said, man, you got to give a shout out to the offensive line.
Exactly.
Those guys did it. They did their doggone job,
Yeah, I also, like, he was talking about drops, and I was trying to go back through my brain, and I was like, is he talking about when Haynes threw to a 6'5" Isaiah Canyon and threw it like 8 feet in the air, and he went up and he almost came down with it at the boundary? It was like, I don't know that we can necessarily call that a drop, but sure. Was the timing off? Very likely. Was that, potentially because of the pressure that Pitt, and I mean, look, we had talked about previously how good their rush defense was, but they could also, get after the quarterback. Was it all those reasons that that they didn't perform up to their standard? Sure. It's also not going to get any easier, and we're going to have plenty of time this week to talk about the team they're about to face and the reasons why it's not going to get any easier. Speaking of this week, Jarvis, I did think it was interesting that Brent Key did point out, hey, best thing about a short week, you don't get time to dwell on the loss that you just experienced because you've got, one less day and a lot of things to focus on. Also, Brent Key did drop some pretty big news in his weekly press, or I guess one of the press conferences that he'll do this week, which is to say Jai Gilmore out for the year. He expected him, he said he's been a leader all season. He expects that to continue, even though he's unable to play. But you had a feeling this was probably headed that direction. We got carted off the field on Saturday.
Yeah, man, that one didn't look good. When you have those type of injuries where they bring the card out, that lets you know that this is probably going to be something that's going to be long term, especially given where you are in this particular season. And then with him being a senior, that's the part that absolutely just sucks. Let me tell you, because he's a guy fought some injuries, was able to come back and be able to contribute and look like the Jahmyr Gilmore that we know, which is a solid guy on the back end of your defense. But yeah, to see him go down like that is truly unfortunate. And hopefully, he can remain around the team and still could try to, establish that leadership like he talked about.
Yeah, big opportunity for Kelvin Hill to step up. I mean, obviously, anytime there's an injury, there's a whole next man up mentality sort of thing. But it's just a very different situation to go from being the backup nickel to starting in that role, and it's going to be interesting. Another challenge for the Yellow Jackets as they head into the week. All right, Jarvis, we need to talk about, though, Kirby Smart had his opportunity this week already to talk about Georgia Tech, but specifically about Haynes King. We'll have to get into the passive-aggressive thing he had to say this week. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. And maybe you were watching in on that Hawks-Hornets game and the type of performance that Jalen Johnson had. So maybe you want to get on the action of him being a leading scorer in the game, because more often than not, it's been Jalen Johnson this season. Maybe you want to get in on the fact that Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels are, they have steals night in on night out. You can combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. FanDuel keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push, and that was certainly the case for the Hawks against the Hornets as they were able to squeak out that win pretty closely. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. This is an interesting week for Georgia Tech. Is obviously that team, as you say, Jarvis, up 3-16. This is the opportunity that they have to, potentially make or break their season, or just the outlook of how things will finish. And it's always interesting when you get to this time of the rivalry week where coaches talk about the opponents that they're going to face. And Kirby Smart got that opportunity this week to talk about Haynes King. And I brought this up to you before we started recording of it's all about you can say something, but it's all kind of in the vocal inflection, and just all the added elements to what you have to say as to the real meaning behind your words. And I think someone who does a really good job at I feel like he smiles at you while he's ready to stab you in the back is Kirby Smart. He just does it. It's so polite, Jarvis.
Not a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Definitely I'm gonna show you respect, but I'm gonna try to kick you in your stuff.
Yeah, he's the type like Jarvis. Kirby's gonna dap you up and bring you in and whisper something real nasty in your ear. Just like real. Just he's gonna let you know what he thinks, and then he's gonna smile at you the rest of the night. Well, when it came to Haynes King, I thought it was interesting how he decided to start off talking about him. He says, anytime you have a quarterback that has the experience he has. Now, I don't know if he's played 5 years, 6 years. I don't know what it is, but he's extremely experienced, extremely tough. I don't think people understand how fast this guy is. He can run. He was a great athlete in high school, a track guy. I mean, the stories are all over of his success, where he's been and the injuries he's been through, the hits he takes. He just gets stronger with each hit. He obviously has some more things to say about Haynes we'll get into in a bit, but I really wanted to focus, Jarvis, on the 2 parts of this, which is I don't know, he's played 5, 6 years. He's an experienced guy. And then I don't think people understand how fast he is, because that sounds like you're getting into the some pretty classic white QB tropes.
Yes, agreed.
Yep.
Agreed. And I think that this is Kirby giving you a peek into what he's telling his players.
Mm-hmm.
He is throwing all the accolades. I'm sure the scouting report was like, Heisman candidate, has 51% of their offense. So, you can't underestimate these guys. And I'm sure that's been the message. As soon as the final horn went off against their game against their Children of the Poor, who they played this weekend? Children of the Poor,
Yeah.
East West
That was
directional.
Dan Lanning said they played the University of what do you say, Chattanooga State.
Yeah.
When Dan Lanning, who
the SEC took a bye week, they all got together and say, "Hey man, we're taking a bye this week. We're gonna play all our 4th and 5th string guys. You know what I mean? But anyway, but no, man, this is the message that Kirby is telling his players because after watching that Pitt game, there was a lot of eyeballs on that game. I'm sure Kirby even mentioned that he watched it. That's the thing that stick out in players' minds. Like, oh, it's sweet. Oh, we got a dub this week. I was actually talking to a couple of Georgia fans on the way back from New Orleans when I went down to New Orleans for the Falcon Saints game. And, man, they are just confident. They man, they are feeling themselves. I was like, man, you don't think Tech has a chance? They're like, nah, man. You don't have to worry about them. I was like, well, what about last year? Do you remember the game? Did you go? I was there. I saw it.
I was in the end zones, man.
Right.
I was running them 100-yard dashes.
Buster had Glenn Schumann he didn't know what to do. Glenn Schumann didn't know what to do. Your defense coordinator for the Bulldogs. He had no idea what to do against this offense. And when you look at it from that standpoint, that lets you know that even though there was definitely some maybe a little passive aggressiveness going on, but the respect is definitely there, when it comes to Kirby, because he understands. He coached with, man, shoot, Buster used to be on his staff, so he knows all the intricacies. He knows where the bodies are buried on his defense. He knows all the weaknesses. Because when you have a guy like, and I know we'll break down the game a little bit later on in the week, but when you have a defense that's young, how you get young players to not look like themselves or their talent to show, hey man, have them thinking before the ball is snapped.
Yeah.
And guess what Buster does really well with his offense? He makes people think. He's like, okay, why is he motioning this guy? Or why is this guy lined up so wide? And why is he motioning in here? Oh, okay, are they about to run a screen over here? Because, Jamal Haynes motion from over there, most of the time when seeing on film, like, it's just, you go through this whole thought process and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the whole point of it. So, yeah, I think there was definitely some passive aggressiveness there, but there is also a respect factor and a message to his players saying, hey, guys, you better not underestimate because They will get you.
I
They will
just
bite you.
it's Jarvis, something about though him talking about like this is not the first time Georgia is seeing Haynes King, but I think the way that he talked about him was this like, you know,
Like he just transferred in or something.
yeah, it was like, come on, media, sit on my lap. Let me tell you a little story about Haynes King. You know, this guy is sneaky fast. I was waiting for him to say he's a coach on the field.
The coach's
You
son,
know,
which he actually is.
he's witty. He's a leader of men. Like, pull out all the white QB tropes. Like,
Right.
come on, Kirby, let's roll through them. Because, you know, you hit us with the, I don't think people know how fast he is. I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do pretty well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then he also, Kirby, in his comments, said, let's see, it was, he's extremely valuable in terms of what they do, what they ask him to do. He's hard to defend on all levels. Throwing the ball, I mean, people think, well, he doesn't throw the ball. He throws the ball really well, and he's really efficient.
Yeah.
All right, now.
Yeah, this is a hard sell. Hard
That's
sell.
That's one of those. And you mentioned, like, he did talk about Buster Faulkner as well, and talked about, you know, obviously, like, I feel like Kirby wanted to take credit for, oh, I mean, you guys see what Buster Faulkner's doing out there. Well, you know where he came from. So it's like, yeah. But essentially talked about the way that Buster is able to, like, pick up small, he called them nuggets, and know how to exploit defenses with that. And I think, you know, that's certainly a true factor. It's just, like I said, it's something about the way that Kirby says these things that makes you feel like, you know, this is not, it's a bless your heart kind of thing. Like somebody from outside the South hears bless your heart and thinks that Southern lady is very caring towards you. And no, it's not like that at all. It's very much a, you know, yeah. We have
like
our
when
little
Cat
thought.
Williams, or like when Cat Williams did a bit where he's like, "Oh, Polo Ting Ting, Polo Ting Ting," like, you know, hey, yeah, you know, yeah, Buster, yeah, he used to be on my staff. You know, he knows where all the little nuggets are, where all the bodies are buried on my defense. Yeah, I get it, but yeah, but you know, we're gonna mess around. We're gonna try to take care of business. So, but yeah, man, I think overall, people want to dwell on the last game. Just understand that Tech they have some stuff they can bring to the table. It's just up to them as to, you know, how they want to play. You have to decide for yourself that, hey, that's not who we are. You know, these past few weeks defensively, that's not who we are. You know, just that team, that defense that you saw in the second quarter to that third quarter, you know, that's what we're capable of, and that's what we're going to bring to the table because we know what's at stake. Yeah, ACC Championship, yep, aside, but this game against those folks up 3-16 is just as big, right?
Well, and that's the thing is, it's understanding how
Keelan Rutledge even said as much. Yeah, he said that. Yeah, like we got state championship this week. So yeah. So that's what
it's about the fact that, like, if you don't think that Brent Key has this team thinking about, hey, this isn't it. Like this could help us in our next steps of getting to where we want to go. Yeah, like Brent Key is about to have this team ready. Part of that, though, Jarvis, does go into, is there still a way that Georgia Tech can make the ACC championship game? It's crazy, but it can happen. It's crazy to still think that there's a situation in which, after losing to NC State, after losing to Pitt, there was no real discussion of what could happen next. Like, is there still a fighting chance for Georgia Tech to make the ACC championship game? And let's be honest, the reason why there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about it is because the scenarios that you have to draw out are a bit convoluted. However, thanks to our buddy, friend of the program, Jackson Caudell, who does a great job covering the Yellow Jackets. He put together, and some others have as well, like a kind of a breakdown of 3 different scenarios in which Georgia Tech can still make the ACC championship game. It starts with Pitt beating Miami, Virginia Tech beating Virginia, Duke losing to Wake Forest, and SMU losing to Cal. That is a place in which we would have a rematch, Jarvis, of Georgia Tech versus Pitt in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. You know, when you think about, like, in our pre-production, we were talking about this. I was just saying how I feel like in an NFL, I was like, hell no, that wouldn't happen. You know, like when you start talking about trying to put together like Falcons playoff scenarios, like, hell no, that ain't gonna happen. No, it's not going down. But we come on down to Saturdays and the college football world, absolutely, it can happen. No one saw Cal beat Louisville. You know, no one saw that coming, and they did it. You know, so when you no one saw really this NC State beating Tech. Nobody saw that.
No.
Nobody saw that because, you know, Dave Doran talking about potentially stepping down or stepping away, being fired, or he tired, you don't want to be there no more. Like, all those things were going on with that team, and you know, and the way Georgia Tech was playing coming into that game, nobody really saw that coming. So, you know, to sit up here and say that, nope, that can't happen. No, I'm not gonna say that, especially when you're talking about any given Saturday. That is a real thing. And I think that it'll be interesting, though, if Tech will have Pitt again on a neutral site. I will be very intrigued to watch that game again, to see, just from a standpoint of the adjustments, what would Buster Faulkner do differently? What would Blake Gideon do differently? And can he do anything differently? Right? You know, it would be so many different like things to that would be in play if that were to happen. But yeah, I think that from a mental aspect, I wouldn't, if I had to put some money down as to whether or not they would come out flat like they did on Saturday, I would bet that would not happen. And I would bet that probably Pitt would probably be like, take those guys lightly and look at that game differently based off of how they played on Saturday, because that's just how 18 to 25-year-olds work. Man's work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's the thing. So you've got another scenario in which Miami beats Pitt, Cal beats SMU, and if you don't think that can happen, I mean, hey, Cal just fired Justin Wilcox, and teams love to play for the interim coach, especially when their season.
In this game, everybody gonna be fired up.
Yeah, exactly. Duke would need to lose to Wake Forest. Yes, the same Wake Forest that beat Virginia. It can happen. Boston College would need to beat Syracuse. I mean, hey, Syracuse just lost to Notre Dame 70-0, so maybe they're just, giving up. NC State would need to beat North Carolina. Virginia, in that situation, beats Virginia Tech, and then you would have Georgia Tech facing Virginia in the ACC championship game. And then the final scenario, a mess. Miami beating Pitt, Cal beats SMU, Virginia Tech beats Virginia, Boston College beats Syracuse, NC State beats North Carolina, and that would be Georgia Tech versus Miami in the ACC championship game. And yeah, that's
that will be very interesting.
Well, that's Jarvis, that's a scenario. Like, I think the other two, the way I'm concerned about these scenarios with Georgia Tech making the ACC championship game is them getting left out of the college football playoff, because if you're gonna pick the top 5 conference champions, that do you go with the AAC or something is it going to be something ridiculous because they're going to undervalue the ACC, going, well, Georgia Tech won the conference and they lost how badly to NC State and how badly to Pitt and like knock the conference down for all those reasons. However, I say all that to say if that scenario works out and Georgia Tech were to play Miami, the darling of the college football playoff committee, that's a way that you find yourself back in the playoff. But that also includes beating Georgia, which it's not any easy task. It's just, man, it's crazy to me, Jarvis, that there are like some legitimate scenarios for this team to still be competing for an ACC championship, which it felt like there was just nothing after that Pitt loss.
Yeah, and when you think about that last scenario where they played Miami, that will be like they will almost have to get in at that point. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like there should be no doubt that they deserve it to have that spot, So especially being ranked higher than the AAC or whatever those conferences, a conference champ coming out of those conferences. So for me, I think that, and I'm gonna sound like a coach when I say this, like they have to kind of just take care of business, right? Tech has to take care of the team up 3-16. Make good on last year. Think about that. Feel that game last year. For everyone that was on that field last year, go back and look at that film and figure out. Look at some of the things that you could have done to get the dub. Like 8 overtimes. Yeah, that was definitely a play to be made, right? Because Georgia was trying to make those plays, and they weren't able to make them. They weren't able to get stops, and you were able to make plays when they weren't able to, get those particular stops. So it was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of chess match, checkers. They went to chess to checkers, then they came back and started playing Monopoly. Like it was just so many different scenarios going on throughout that game that just played out in Georgia's favor. So my message, if I'm Key, I'm saying forget all of the scenarios, forget all of the ways we can get in, and forget over these watch parties trying to figure out what score, what game is. Let's just take care of business on Friday and let the chips fall where they may. And if we get an opportunity to get in, we know what we got to do.
That's going to do it, Jarvis, for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Tomorrow, we'll have more time to get into breaking down what Georgia does particularly well, but also what can be exploited in that team. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Georgia Tech on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media, as well as Jarvis and I. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Downa break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.